morning, friends. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. I hope your summer is going great and is full of this kind of a scene. Um, as folks are streaming in, I'll just say welcome to our 54th meeting of the Local Energy Resources Network. I'm Angie Hacker. I'm the Statewide Best Practices Coordinator for the California Climate and Energy Collaborative, joined as usual by the team, Kelsey and Rochelle from CCEC. As you're strolling in, make yourself at home. Always welcome you to put on your camera if you like. It's nice. We were just all together recently. Sometimes I miss your faces, but only if you're comfortable. And introduce yourself over chat. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? And just as folks stream in, hopefully you're all recovered from Seek Week. Give me an emoji or something of some kind if you are now super busy applying all of your new learning, all of your new friends and collaborators with all the new ideas you came home with. I know I am. Yep, I see claps and hearts. Me too. It was so fun to be with you. Thanks so much if you came. Really appreciate it. All right, so we're off. This is our normal standing agenda and some pretty good speakers for you here today. We'll do what we normally do, which is an interactive 1 hour that is designed to be a regular space where local governments and those that work with them can help each other learn about and possibly inform. That's what we'll do a little bit of today. Available opportunities to advance your energy and climate goals. We are fortunate today to have some great spotlights and speakers, so I'll run through my opportunity roundtable here in just a moment. I will also run through update now that the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Grant is out. I'm going to spotlight that a bit. I'll hand over to our friend Jane. Bayren is going to tell us about the CalREN forum coming up on July 29th. And our feature discussions today are going to be a smorgasbord of California Energy Commission input opportunities that are important and active right now, and they're looking for your feedback. So we're going to talk about the Building Energy Performance Strategy Report, a report that's related to the CEC's non-energy benefits proceeding. And we're also going to talk about the distributed electricity backup, the new DEBA grant that there's a solicitation out for that's just in draft form, and they're looking for input. And then we'll hang around for a few Seek updates and the bonus breakout at noon, which is our informal time to share information and announcements, or we go into overtime with some discussion. So that's the plan for today. Again, thanks for joining us. If you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, please do. Okay, so here's our hyperlinked cheat sheet, as we always have, our messy version, which is where we're trying to provide some information on timely updates and opportunities for you. On the left there, sometimes I like to try to highlight things that are related to policy investments that's good for you to be aware of. Obviously, we're in the California budget season, but I actually just wanted to kind of highlight this federal issue that probably a lot of you have seen and heard about related to OMB. It's the proposed regulation for federal financial assistance. So there were comments actually due a couple days ago on the 13th, and you may have heard people are pretty upset about this one. So I follow a lot of folks, including Diane Yentl. She's the head of the National Council for Nonprofits. She posted, I think it was yesterday, that there were 300,000 comments that were made by the deadline. People are upset about this one and concerned. She and others have said it would radically remake the federal grant-making process for nonprofits, state and local governments, and other grantees, affecting $1 trillion a year in spending, harming lots of communities, including with disruptions in services and assistance. And it sounds like it would kind of allow partisan political appointees to determine who gets grants, and it would make it a lot easier to cancel those hard-earned federal awards that some of you have. So I imagine it's going to affect a lot of topics, including climate and clean energy programs. Probably not fare too well under that system. More to come on what happens, but it was nice to see a good showing of comments asking them to basically not move forward. A lot of folks asking them to not move forward with these new proposed regulations. Okay. So let's talk about some funding opportunities. In yellow are two that we haven't highlighted before, and I'd like to talk to you about. In blue, those are some spotlights we're going to get to. And so let's start here first with a program from the California Energy Commission. It's a research-related program. It's direct air capture, pre-commercial demonstration, and community engagement, due July 31st, so coming right up. All public and private entities are eligible. It's actually funded by the California Climate Investment Program, and it's $11 million total, with awards between 2.5 and 5 million, with a 20% match. And it's funding to support the development and deployment of advanced direct air capture carbon dioxide removal technology through pre-commercial pilot and demonstration projects under real-world conditions. So if you're not familiar, direct air capture technology removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere for permanent underground storage or conversion into valuable products. So it may be that you feel like you're a site that wants to try something like this. And if so, you may be interested in partnering up and doing some demonstration projects. Again, due July 31st. Another one I wanted to highlight here is really for folks that are interested, and maybe you have some agricultural activities in your climate action plans. It's USDA, so it's a federal grant. It's called Regional Conservation Partnership Program. You have until August 24th to apply. There's $310 million available here, intended to help farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners boost their operations and conserve natural resources on agricultural land. Some of the priorities include things like soil health, water quality, wildlife habitat, with an aim to improve land health, enhance resource management, and promote sustainable agriculture and long-term protection of agricultural grassland and forest viability. So there's a couple different tracks here. They're calling classic or alternative, which is just about how it is funded. But if you're working with your farmers and agricultural communities on things like healthy soils and sustainable ag, this could be something for you. I do have a spotlight I'm going to do here in just a moment on the LCI Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program. I want an emoji. I know everybody I talk to has been dying for this one to come out. It's out. We're excited. Let's talk a little bit about it, because I think there is some confusion, and I'll do that next. I also wanted to share some input opportunities. So there are 3 that are in blue, right? We just said we're going to talk about those in some detail in the featured discussions today with some guests. And the last thing I want to talk about before I go into a spotlight is just to remind folks in certain areas that we have 4 remaining Catalyst convenings that are coming to 4 different regions in California. So we've done 5 so far, and there's 4 remaining. And so Sacramento Valley is going to be on these are SGC and LCI hosted events, and California Climate Energy Collaborative is definitely a planning partner on these. But Sacramento Valley will be next on August 11th. Then we'll go to Sierra Nevada on August 25th. We'll be in North Coast on September 15th, and then Inland Deserts, we have a date TBD, but that will be a little bit later on in fall. And so those are our Catalyst convenings. We usually see about 150 people that come to those events, and it's usually an opportunity to provide input to help shape some of the state's energy, climate, and land use policies. So it's an interesting roundtable format to gather your insights and input on regional priorities. All right, so that was the fire hose. You're probably seeing some links thrown in the chat for those kinds of programs if you want to learn more. You're also going to get information after today in a follow-up email, so all these links will be available. Let's go to our next slide. Okay, so I do want to highlight here for you the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Funding Round 2 grant. So I actually just talked to some folks in LCI yesterday. And so this is round 2. This is, I think, Prop 4 funded, and I think they're expecting even a round 3 at some point. But for now, they have $27.5 million available total for this round. The program aims to support efforts that combine community services and physical improvements to protect the health of Californians who are most vulnerable to extreme heat. And so I just want to point out here, there are two tracks here. One is called Early Transformative Infrastructure. It's between 600,000 and 1 million. That one is for smaller early stage projects that need more planning or time for building infrastructure solutions. They must include an infrastructure demonstration project. So that's where I feel like I'm talking to everybody about this grant. And I feel like I'm reminding folks, there's an infrastructure component here. So it's not just a planning or engagement grant. And so the next one, which is a larger tract, is between 2.5 million and 4 million for advanced transformation infrastructure. Those are larger, more complex projects that focus on built environment or nature-based solutions designed primarily to provide shade or cooling benefits. Okay, so there's a couple of application deadlines to keep in mind here if this is something you're thinking about. You have all the way till October 13th for a full application, but they are requesting pre-applications. And so the first deadline is called window 1. And so you would have, it's short, you only have until July 21st. So only about another week to apply. This one is to submit a pre-application interest form, which I think is fairly simple. And you would let them know if you're interested in technical assistance. Window 2, there would not be technical assistance and available for that anymore. You would get that pre-application interest form in by August 11th. And that's it. I know that a lot of you are interested, so go forth. It's available. Hooray. I know we've all been excited about it. Let's go to our next slide. Okay, I get to hand off to my friend Jane with BayREN, who is one of the speakers at an upcoming CalREN forum. Take it away, Jane.
Thanks, Angie, and hello to everyone. Just quickly, CalREN is going to be hosting its third annual forum on Wednesday, July 29th from 1 to 3. For those of you who aren't familiar with CalREN or California Regional Energy Networks, it's a statewide collaborative of the 7 regional energy networks throughout the state. And as you probably know, RENs are made up of local governments and are administrators of energy efficiency programs that draw on the expertise, experience, and capacity of innovative ideas for programs around the state. We're going to be discussing energy efficiency as an affordability resource, and the agenda includes setting a context regarding the value of energy efficiency, how it provides Californians an affordability resource. You're going to hear from a moderated panel of experts, including Rita Casaverde with the Diversity Coalition of San Luis Obispo County, Reuben Sussman from ACEEE, and Aisha Cervantes-Cisna from San Diego REN, with time for hopefully a robust Q&A. And then we're going to be bringing back our popular breakout rooms where people are going to have some dedicated time for rich discussion on a number of topics around energy affordability. So I think the link is probably in the chat if you are interested in signing up. Again, that's Wednesday the 29th from 1 to 3, and that's a virtual forum. Thank you. I think you're on mute, Angie.
Thanks, Jane. All right, thanks for that, Jane. And that link is certainly now in the chat. It says register here. So we would love to see you at the CalREN forum, and you can register today. Pass it along to a friend, too. Okay, let's go to our next slide. All right, now we're getting into our featured discussions where we have several CEC input opportunities we're going to run through. And our first is going to be with our friend Gabriel Taylor. So many of you know him. He comes to a lot of our things, and he's a good friend to local governments. He's a senior energy engineer with the California Energy Commission. And he is going to talk to us about the draft of the California Energy Performance Strategy. So those of you that are interested in benchmarking, this is certainly a topic for you. And so, Gabe, we're going to go to our next slide, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks so much, Angie. Really appreciate the time. So I just dropped the link in the chat to our website for our California Building Energy Performance Strategy Report. Some of you may be familiar with, but just a quick recap here. And Angie's quite helpfully put together a slide that has all the information right here on one page. Hopefully everyone has access to the presentation after the fact so that they can click on all the links. But the link I just put in the chat should have all the critical links there as well, including to this report. So the report is in response to Senate Bill 48, which was passed in 2023, that required the Energy Commission to develop a strategy for using benchmarking data that the state already collects to achieve California's long-term climate and energy and sustainability goals. We have published our draft report. We published it about a week ago on July 7th, and it's out for comment. We're going to host a workshop on the 29th. I want to emphasize this workshop is intended to provide you a summary of the report if you're interested in it, and give you some background on what to review in advance of the comment date. We're not expecting stakeholders to come to this workshop and have comments already formed. This is intended to facilitate your review of our document. The document's about 200 pages, but about half of that is appendices. The executive summary is very light. It's only about a page and a half. And we will summarize all of the critical elements at the workshop on the 29th. But what I can say here is that the report, we have analyzed a number of building performance strategies and programs around the country. We've had extensive conversations with stakeholders, both equity stakeholders, building owners, manufacturers of decarbonization technology, utilities, other states and jurisdictions, both in and out of California. And we've come to the conclusion that a statewide long-term building performance strategy for buildings that includes both a site greenhouse gas intensity metric and a site energy metric would be the best strategy, the least cost strategy to support California's progress towards our mid-century goals. It's critical to give building owners flexibility in how they achieve these goals, but also give them a clear schedule and targets to achieve as we progress towards those goals. We are particularly interested, as you review this report, we're particularly interested in local government perspectives on how a state BPS would interact with local BPS. We've seen in the state of Washington, in the interaction between Washington and Seattle, one model for how a state and local BPS could interact. We've also seen a different model in the state of Colorado with the city of Denver. There's a few other examples of Portland, Oregon, the state of Oregon, and we are very interested in collaborating with local jurisdictions to support your progress in achieving your climate targets, your sustainability, equity targets, but also trying to look for efficiencies, process efficiencies, administrative efficiencies, streamlining opportunities so that we can all collectively progress towards these targets in a way that is the least cost, both administratively and economy-wide, and also is a strong step towards all of these targets. We're also interested in what components of other BPS programs that you're aware of that maybe we did not cover in our report, if you have any comments on that. We're curious about any recommended metrics that align with what building owners already implement to reduce their energy costs. We have a section in the report that discusses alternative metrics. Our report is intended to be kind of a high-level assessment of building performance strategies in general, and then it drills down into some specific recommendations for the state of California. We're interested in what targets could be set, how we can set targets to make them both technically and economically feasible. We're particularly sensitive to the current focus on energy costs, and obviously California has challenges with housing availability, real estate costs, and we want to make a realistic policy here that will bring us towards our long-term goals in a sustainable way, in a way that will stand the test of time. Let's see. And we're very interested in improving our data collecting requirements. The state already has benchmarking requirements. Some local jurisdictions also have benchmarking requirements and receive exemptions from the state. But we're interested in light of these recommendations for a statewide building performance strategy, and also in the interest from the legislature and the administration on using that benchmarking data to implement real requirements and real guidelines for achieving our targets. We're interested in improving our benchmarking data collection and streamlining it so that building owners have better access to the tools they need to get their data in the most efficient way possible. Finally, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, we're interested in any technology challenges that jurisdictions might identify that we don't cover. And that wasn't finally one more item. We're very interested in tenant protections. So the legislature in SB 48 asked us to consider impacts on rents, impacts on housing availability, an energy policy or BPS is not necessarily a good place to put in rent control language or any sort of tenant protections of that nature. But we are interested in exploring how best to implement BPS and building performance strategies in general while managing impacts on tenant costs and protecting tenants as best we can. So a ton of other information in there, and hopefully you get a chance to take a look at the report between now and the 29th when we have our workshop. And then our comment deadline is Friday, August 21st. We like to put those comment deadlines on Fridays rather than Mondays to give you your weekend off. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope most of you get a chance to take a look at the report. Highly recommend looking at least at the executive summary. It's pretty short and it's got some good ideas in there, I think. Love to hear your perspective. Happy to take some questions. Angie, are we going to do questions now or?
Yeah, let's do it. And you're right, that executive summary is like 2 pages. Whoever wrote that, good job. Nice and snappy. There are a few questions here. Actually, getting one person. Congrats, Gabriel and team. Exciting report and effort. And then I'm hearing from Daniel. Are data centers covered in the building energy report?
Data centers are covered by our benchmarking requirement, currently covered by our benchmarking requirement, and I would certainly recommend that data centers are covered under a benchmarking under a future BPS. The only building type that I would suggest should be as a generality, as a category excluded from a BPS is condominiums. I think the administrative complications of applying building performance requirements to a condominium is just too much. You have many owners and a lot of split incentives and split responsibilities, and it just gets way too complicated. I think the BPS is kind of a one size fits all with one or two exceptions, right? I think that the approach for condominiums should be much more incentive driven, technical assistance driven. There's a lot of, I think, pathways to support condominium owners in achieving sustainability goals, minimizing energy costs. And I don't think that BPS is a good fit, or at least we don't think BPS is a good fit for condominiums. But beyond that, hospitals, schools, data centers, you name it. I think we are suggesting that all buildings have clear targets in mind. One of the things I like to emphasize when talking about this strategy is that this is intended, what our analysis shows is that this is the least cost pathway. When we talk about achieving these long-term targets, the question is, but how much will it cost to get there? And it really depends on exactly what targets you set. But our analysis shows that regardless of the target that you set, the least cost pathway to get there is to give building owners as much flexibility as possible, as long a runway as possible, and clear targets between here and there, and then to cap overall costs based on a penalty structure that essentially reinvests funding from those building owners that are unable to achieve those targets into the low-hanging fruit, into buildings that are easily able to make changes but do not possibly have the funding. And through that mechanism, over the long term, jurisdiction-wide, you can achieve real progress at reasonable cost.
Thanks, Gabriel. Can I ask a follow-up to that? So that the funding mechanism seems to revolve. Where is that housed within the state?
Funding mechanism. Right now, nothing is housed within the state. So this is, and that's an important, I think, clarification. The legislature asked the Energy Commission to analyze the opportunities and to make recommendations. And this report is simply recommendations. Currently, there is no program, there are no requirements. And I think it's worth emphasizing, we do not want to slow down local jurisdiction action. We strongly support all the action that each local jurisdiction is taking. We want to work with you to hopefully align with each other, to potentially align with a future statewide BPS. And when a statewide BPS goes into effect, we want to make sure that we have a plan for how to transition so that there's a clear handoff, a clear trade-off, a clear complementary regulatory structure there. Any steps that a building owner takes between now and 2045 will put them in a better position to comply with a statewide policy whenever it goes into effect. That's one of the elegant aspects of a BPS is that you have you have a baseline year where you collect data to determine your starting point for the building. But a building owner that invests in their property before that baseline year simply has a lower starting point, and that means they have less work that they need to do, if any. Properly operating, highly efficient building may not need to make any changes over the next a couple of decades to have their building in compliance. They might start in compliance. So that's certainly an option.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so no programs being developed out of this directly, but there is a recommendation here for penalties for non-compliance, which at some point we'll have to figure out who administers that, I suppose. Okay, I see another question.
Certainly in
go
our
ahead.
report, we recommend that the Energy Commission administer a BPS. So our recommendation is the legislature authorize the Energy Commission to implement a statewide BPS with real penalties.
Thank you. All right, I see a couple more questions here. Al says, thanks. How does the CEC imagine recommendations coming out of the BPS report interface coordination with the California state building codes and local ordinances? And does BPS accelerate electrification and decarbonization in any way?
Yeah, it's a great question, Alice. So a BPS essentially takes the handoff from the building standards. So I spent almost a decade working on building standards, and I think there's another elegance here. A building standards is how you build a building. They are standards for how a building is built. It's largely standards on the contractor, on the engineers who are developing building a building, and they're intended to protect the consumer who takes ownership of that building, to prevent a contractor from potentially cutting corners and harming, usually financially harming, but potentially harming the well-being of the occupants and owners of that building subsequently. The building code essentially is hands-off once the occupancy permit is issued, barring a major alteration to that building. There is no further regulatory oversight of a building once that building owner takes ownership and once the occupancy permit is issued. And this is where a building performance standard would step in. Once that large building goes into effect, goes into occupation, goes into use, we would start collecting annual benchmarking data on the building to monitor it and make sure it's operating correctly. A building performance standard would say that the building owner needs to maintain that building appropriately to some minimum level that we determine through a public regulatory process, some minimum level that makes sense, and potentially to upgrade that building as building science advances. So, we saw recently over my career, but we saw over the last 20 years, we saw huge advances in lighting technology going from fluorescent to LED lighting. That was a technological step change. We saw huge advances in heat pump technology and in the availability of electrification for heating loads, potentially in solar and battery storage, huge advances in battery storage. All these are examples where a older building, maybe when it was built, it didn't make sense. It wasn't cost effective to upgrade it, but at some point it became cost effective to upgrade that building. And a BPS puts in place targets that are flexible enough that a building owner can schedule around the useful life of the existing equipment. They're not required to change out equipment that's functional, but rather to make plans for when equipment burns out, to replace it with the appropriate, highly efficient technology that is now available. So in answer to the question, the building code and a BPS would be really complementary. The building code would govern how a building is built, and then a BPS would govern how a building is operated.
Thank you. We've got just a couple of minutes left for this segment. There's a couple questions we could get through quickly. Carba's asking if there's anything that stood out to you in the state of Washington or Colorado that they did with Seattle or Denver.
Yeah, so we feel that Seattle has led the way. We really developed our analysis and recommendations based, standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. There's been so much innovation and learning that's been done over the past decade or more, and we really appreciate everyone that's done work there. We certainly we feel that we would like to avoid a situation where a building owner is required to comply with multiple building performance standards as either the same metric or different metrics. In Washington State, it's different metrics. Seattle has one metric. The state has another metric, and buildings within Seattle comply with both. We feel that the reporting periods should be aligned. So hopefully we can work with local jurisdictions who are considering BPS to align the reporting schedule so that building owners who have buildings in multiple jurisdictions can have a clear expectation for when their data is due and when their compliance periods land.
Okay, thank you. Last question here from Omri. Curious if you could talk more about the AB 802 compliance and the potential increase in enforcement to increase the current 50% participation rate.
First, good news, the participation rate, the reporting rate is over 50%. I think in our last reporting cycle, we got just over 60%. So we're definitely been bringing it up partially in light of SB 48 and with the awareness that at some point in the future, we would like to have this data of a high enough quality to apply a building performance strategy or standard. Our staff has been stepping up our enforcement significantly. We've sent out a number of letters to indicate that we will exercise our penalty authority at some point in the future if we can't bring building owners up. It's worth emphasizing there that we do not get that money. If we levy fines as a penalty for not complying with our benchmarking authority, that money goes back to the general fund. We do not get it. So we do not want to levy fines. We want building owners to comply with the requirements. We want to give them as much technical assistance and information necessary to support their compliance. We're definitely trying to bring compliance up, but we are stepping that up so that our goal is to improve compliance sufficiently over the next couple of years so that by 2030, which is approximately the earliest time that we could see a BPS passed by the legislature, a regulatory proceeding at the Energy Commission, and then to go into effect, it would probably be around 2030. We'll have solid data to support the initial compliance levels for buildings.
All right. Well, good questions, guys. Thanks so much, Gabriel, for being here and sharing that with us. There's a question. Is there a link for buildings to access? Okay. So maybe you can take a couple more questions here in the chat if you can hang around for just a couple more minutes, Gabriel. And
Absolutely.
So go to that workshop, guys. The workshop doesn't sound like an opportunity to provide direct input, but it is an opportunity to hear more information and ask questions. Some of you may be interested in submitting comments. I'm sort of curious, and maybe just folks, if you're very interested in this and you'd be willing to help coordinate on some comments here, could you throw your name in the chat? We haven't decided whether or not we're submitting comments on this, but if there's enough interest in collaboration, we certainly may. So go ahead and throw your name there if this is something you'd like to work with us on, or maybe you'll submit directly yourself. All right. Well, thanks again to Gabe. Let's move on to our next topic. All right. Well, you guys know Jacqueline Jones. In fact, she was nice enough to come and be with us at the SEEK Forum, and she came to our SLEEK meeting. She's the Zero Carbon Electricity Lead with the Energy Assessments Division at the California Energy Commission. And so she let me know that there is a newly released report that's related to the non-energy benefits proceeding that I know some of you are following and is really pretty important. So she's going to give us a little summary of what's in the new report, what's in the proceeding, and how you could participate and get involved in a comment period. So take it away, Jacqueline. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you for inviting me to the meeting today. As you spoke, I wanted to talk today about some work that's going on and the non-energy impacts informational proceeding that's going on at the Energy Commission. I dropped the link to the proceeding page in the chat. And what you'll find in the now available box is a link to a new staff report that just came out. Back in May, we had a staff webinar that discussed new approaches that we're investigating for incorporating non-energy impacts into supply planning. We define non-energy impacts as the benefits or costs that result from the resource choices that are made for electricity. So as an example, the one people are most familiar with is air quality. Choosing natural gas resources has resulted in air quality emissions that have negative impacts on public health. So, excuse me, there are many other types of those impacts, and we're looking at incorporating that into supply planning as a way to upgrade the work that we're doing to be able to make better, more holistic decisions on the energy resource choices. So on May 18th, we held a staff webinar to discuss those approaches, and the document that we released is basically a written documentation for those approaches that we're planning. It includes detail around the metrics that are available for us to choose from for our test plan and the calculation methods that are associated with that. So, a quick overview of the report. For us, from our perspective, this is a major step in plan for expanding how the electricity system choices can be made by including the impacts that it has on the people and the communities. The traditional electricity supply models, they're designed basically to minimize the system cost and ensure the reliability, and that's it. With the centralized fossil fuel plants, I don't know, it seemed that that was appropriate at the time, but I mean, we're talking back in the 60s and 70s. Resources have changed a lot. They bring a lot different ideas now than they did before. With the new technologies, there's different kinds of benefits that come with them. So we want to make sure that we can incorporate the value that's brought using these different resources, whether they're distributed, whether they're centralized, whether they're base load or intermittent. By incorporating the non-energy impacts, we're able to account for those different structures. So what we're looking at including right now is ambient air quality and public health. Specifically, we're looking at incorporating the mortality. That's something that's never been done before. We're looking at incorporating household energy costs and the impacts of that, energy resilience, water use, and workforce and economic impacts, like the jobs that could come with building new resources, things like that. Those domains were chosen specifically because they tie directly to electricity generation and consumption. And it is really important for state policy to know and understand as much as possible those impacts and how they affect the environment at large. The report describes the challenges that integrating these impacts have, because it's a difficult thing to do. There's a lot of things you have to get agreement on. The granularity of the modeling has been at a level that doesn't incorporate community level differences. And so that's some of the things that we're looking at to try to impact the way that the modeling is done. Some of the approaches that we're using are, it's typical to have post hoc analysis of these types of impact assessments, which is after the fact. It's like a resource mix is already established, and then the calculations are done to identify the impacts. We're also trying to incorporate cost modifiers that monetize the health or other impacts. Constraints, similar to the way the GHG constraint is added, but say a constraint on resilience, to say that the system has to bring a certain level of resilience so that it needs to have the resources to match that. There's distributional sensitivity analysis, which we're looking at the ability to say, if we take distributed energy resources, so solar, PV, residential, if it's distributed to just anyone who selects it, is it different if it is actually, if there's programs that are developed to give it to certain, say, disadvantaged communities as an example? What would that look like? What would that change? It's an exploratory document and exploratory work. What we're hoping to do is get information from people that are knowledgeable who can give us potentially other ideas for things to incorporate. Looking at approaches in a different way. While we have set a date for July 20th for the end of the comment period, it's an open docket so that if you have, good substantive information to provide to us but can't get it in by the 20th, we're still going to accept it and we're still going to look at it. We are, on a timeline for doing our testing, which is why we requested the 20th. So the closer you can get to that date, the better. But from our perspective, we will continue to look at it. While the non-energy impact proceeding, has like a set process, we intend to incorporate this kind of work going forward at the Energy Commission. So it's not going to stop when this proceeding ends. And I guess just a little bit of the backstory. This proceeding was initiated by a petition. There was a group of petitioners, maybe some are part of your organization, I'm not sure, that basically made a request for us to look at it. We felt like an informational proceeding was the most, it was a much more transparent process than the way we normally operate. So this way we can get stakeholder feedback. We always, when we have had workshops in the past, we've had audiences come and be able to speak with us about their issues, and we'd like to keep that going. Right now we're in our investigation phase, but once we finish our tests, we will publish the results and have a workshop then as well to kind of talk about the results and what people think about them. So there's a lot to look forward to with this proceeding. And I think with that, I'll stop talking. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Really appreciate you alerting us. I think a lot of folks here, maybe not everybody speaks the language of what a non-energy impact is, but now we're starting to learn more, and it turns out pretty important. Can I ask a clarifying question? What's the relationship here with SB 100? Do you see this as a way to change how you are doing the supply analysis or demand forecast for SB 100?
So SB 100 is joint agency report. So it's joint with CARB and the CPUC. And we have to make joint decisions with respect to what's included in that report, as well as the way the analysis is done for that report. So I can't specifically speak to that. I can only specifically speak for Energy Commission work, which the supply planning at the Energy Commission is in what's called the SARA report. Let me see, can I remember what those initials stand for? California Energy Resource Reliability Outlook. So we're looking more at revising the supply planning in that venue than in the SB 100 report. But when things are successful in one venue, you never know what happens in another, but we're not planning for that.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, just, in our sleep conversations and in our sleep report, when we could submit this as well, what we already know from local governments, so much emphasis that they would like us to share. They want to see more emphasis and investment from the state in localized distributed energy resources. And I feel like getting this kind of a formula right would help us maybe potentially make the case for those, which some of the critiques we've had in SB 100 were around, the singular focus on central utility scale resources. So I just want to, I'm giving a little context for folks just so you know how important this really could be. Peter in the chat is asking, how would this interact with current PUC definition of cost effectiveness and IOU lobbying, actively pushing the commission to narrow the logic for EE programs and their administrators to be more focused on purely cost savings? How could this practically move us in another direction?
So again, I'm speaking only for the CEC. It's my understanding that the CPUC has a non-energy benefits proceeding for energy efficiency. I unfortunately don't have the bandwidth to follow it, so I don't really know what it's covering or what's happening. But the CEC is the venue that we are looking to impact with our proceeding. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Yes. All right. I do see a question here from Pam. Also, there's a question about how do they contact you, Jacqueline? Is there a certain email
Oh,
that you could give out? That'd be great if you could put
yeah.
something in the chat.
So, yeah, actually, everybody can see the spelling of my name, right? So at the Energy Commission, your email is your name, jacqueline.jones@energy.ca.gov. So feel free to email me anytime. Happy to connect.
Question here from Pam is asking about propane usage considered in the non-energy impact study.
So I don't believe propane specifically is, because it's generally a smaller value compared to the other resources. But again, we're looking at different ways to do things. So happy to take any information that you can share. And maybe there's a way that we can incorporate it. As I said, one of the issues that we have is the granularity of the evaluation that we do. There's planning areas that are similar to the balancing authorities. So they're fairly large areas, like SCE has one area, PG&E territory is another area. So it's based on the balancing authority primarily, so they're fairly large, and propane use is a small constituent of that. So
It seems like there's a lot of interest, so we're getting good discussion here in the chat. And I do want to get through our one last topic. Jacqueline, are you available to hang around for overtime in the bonus breakout, and maybe can handle a couple of these in the chat in the meantime?
Yeah, what I'll do is try to work on the stuff in the chat, and then if there's anything left, I'll hang around after the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Yeah.
I appreciate being able to share today.
And it sounds like lots of enthusiasm around this topic. So July 20th is when those initial set of comments would be due, but she says they can accept comments beyond that as well. Okay, so smorgasbord of CEC. Like I said, this time I'm going to actually try to run through this program. So Doug O'Brien with the California Energy Commission alert, and he's here today, but is unable to actually give the presentation, but could provide some answers to just clarifying questions, since this is an active solicitation feedback period. But he alerted me to this solicitation, which is in draft form right now for the Distributed Electricity Backup Assets Program. I believe it's the first time it's been funded, and it's funded out of Prop 4. So the program incentivizes the construction of cleaner and more efficient distributed energy assets that would serve as an on-call emergency supply or load reduction for the state's electrical grid during extreme events. This is certainly very connected with a lot of the priorities that we hear about when we do our SLEEK statewide meetings or our regional events, our REACH events, or with the Catalyst convenings. This stuff is certainly on your mind. It's nice to see a funding source to help support some of this kind of work. What we're going to talk about today and what comments are due on by July 15th is for there's two funding categories. We're going to talk about distributed energy resources category, and that solicitation is what is in development. They're looking for comments by tomorrow, which I've already started drafting, so you're welcome to provide feedback on mine or to submit your own comments directly. And so I'm going to walk through a little bit more detail on the program, and then I'm going to show you, and actually maybe some of the team can actually just drop my draft comments in the chat, which I have some work to do on. You get an idea of where I'm headed. Next slide. All right, so this is just the timeline for the Prop 4 DEBA DER solicitation. And it looks like we have, like I said, till the 15th, and then they're going to be anticipating a final solicitation release in August or September. And then you'll be out and applying for this kind of thing, ideally within about 90 days. Next slide. So some highlights. It's a competitive solicitation. It would deploy new commercially available zero emission DERs that increase supply or reduce or shift load, provide new capacity that is incremental to the state's resource adequacy supplies and existing strategic reliability reserves, and improves grid reliability. The projects must be in California. Development and operations must also occur in California, and the finished asset has to be connected to the distribution grid. So successful projects are expected to begin deploying DER resources quickly to meet statutory deadlines. Next slide. So this one's interesting. There's going to be a total of up to $46 million. I think it was originally in the statute, $46 million for competitive awards. You will see in the solicitation that there's this consideration that came from somewhere about diverting potentially up to half of those dollars towards cost share for some water utility related projects. I think there's such a need here for this kind of a program, and we'll talk about the kinds of eligible activities. I sort of hope that it stays available as grants, 46 million in competitive grants. So that's one of the things we could consider suggesting. There is a minimum match fund for this as well, so 25%. I'll tell you, I hear a lot, both from under-resourced local communities and tribal communities too, how difficult a match can be and discouraging participation from programs like this. So that's something else we could consider recommending, is a reduction or a change in that match funding. And the commitment letters for that would be at the time of application. Okay, next slide. Location and site, so it is for both behind the meter and in front of the meter DERs. It's for non-residential or aggregated residential sites. Those are what's eligible. It's making me think of a lot of you out there that are really focused on doing energy projects for those kinds of customers, our regional energy networks, CCAs, and others that are already working with those kinds of property owners. Single site or multiple distinct sites allowed, verified site control documentation required for each site. I don't think that's as much of an issue probably for locals. It's certainly an issue for tribes. All right, next slide. Eligible technologies. So they must be new and zero emission. So these are the kinds of things that could be funded. Energy storage, right? And we hear this all the time, and it's in our SLEEK report that folks would really like to be able to access dollars for more energy storage. You'd like to be able to stack and layer those into the projects you're already supporting within your communities, maybe public or commercial or community scale. And so that's eligible along with load flexible enabling technologies, so smart thermostats and HVAC controls, water controls, advanced monitors, and others. Zero emission distributed generation technologies like waste heat to power and microgrids. And I know everybody's struggling out there to try to figure out how to layer funding sources for microgrids. And so some real opportunity, I think, here. Next slide. Unallowable costs. I'm sure it will disappoint people that they cannot also fund solar PV as part of this, because those projects typically go well together, solar and storage, but that's what's in the draft solicitation. Slide. So That's a super quick overview. Here's what I just want to make sure you have access to my comments and you can just go right in. This is do it in comment mode, but you can just go in and make comments or even just try to redline some things. I'd love to hear from you. You can see my structure here for my comments. Let me make sure everybody has access to it. Is to kind of walk through what we already know from some publications that we have written because we've talked to you all for years and years and we know some of what you're looking for and what you have suggested. So we're talking a little about SLEEK in our report and even the Better Funding report in terms of like how to make funding more accessible and just picking out some key recommendations here towards the bottom. That's really where we would like to hear from you. What would you change about this solicitation when you, as you know, where we have the time to do it? With that, I'll just say we really appreciate Doug and the California Energy Commission for asking for comments on this and for making I think, a potentially really useful grant program at a time where we all need more grants. And I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions on this. And I think what we'll do is take this into overtime as well to kind of pop open the document for anybody who's interested. And you can give me direct feedback for those last 15 minutes.
So Angie, I can add a little bit of clarification.
Yes.
You cited some legislation in terms of the creation of the DEBA program. With this funding, it's a more of a layered approach because this funding is coming from Proposition 4. And so we have to follow layer those requirements on top of the DEBA program. And then on top of that, there was additional conditions and opportunities that were put into the budget bill, SB 105. And that's where the split of the 23 million over the overall 46. In SB 105, two important things to note. Once it said zero emission, which significantly reduced the eligible technologies that we can support. And then it also stipulated that no less than 12.5 million would be available for direct award for recipients who have a GRIP award from the federal government. And it must be not just that they've applied, but they have to have that award in hand and ready to deploy before an agreement is reached. So I just wanted to add that additional clarification. You're on mute.
Thanks, guys. I keep doing that today. So that water utility, that's a done deal. Some dollars will go to that for cost share. We just don't know how much.
We have several agencies who have submitted letters of interest. We have to review those and start entering into discussions with them to determine that first, are they eligible under those terms, and whether it is a viable project, considering they still have to meet certain obligations in terms of how they have to perform, regardless of getting a direct award. So there's still. We'll see how much funding goes to which pot. It's not completely locked in yet.
Well, thanks, Doug. I don't see direct questions here, but we're going to take this into overtime. Hopefully you can hang around and answer any more clarifying questions. And really, guys, just this is nice. If we just do a comment here, we can just, you could add to it. You could be anonymous in doing it, but we'd love to hear your thoughts before we have to submit tomorrow. Okay, so thanks again to all my CEC speakers. Let's do some emojis. I really appreciate they keep alerting us to this, and they really do seem to want our input and are creating some good reports and programs for us. Lots of claps and hearts. Ooh, and a horn or two. All right, so I'm going to hand off to Kelsey just to give you a little wrap up on our SEEK forum this year.
Hey, everybody. Thanks everyone who came to our forum last month. We had a really great event. Really excited. Just have a couple of things that I wanted to share along with these pictures that we got, and we'll be sharing more of our pictures and more of our the resources on our website really soon. But we had over 500 attendees, which was really great, representing 243 organizations and coming from 134 cities across California. I also love both this year and last year, over 50% of the people who have been coming to our events have never been to one before. So hopefully that's good. We get new people in the door every day. I think it was a really great event. I'm curious in the group how many people came last month who are here today. If you want I don't know, give a thumbs up or raise your hand or something like that and see. So quite a few. Good. Well, anyway, hope if you haven't yet, and you did come and you haven't taken our survey, please be sure to do so by the end of this week. We'll be using that information. We'll send it out to the different sessions you attended and use it to plan next year. So we hope that you take our survey, and then we'll be sending out more information and more of our of the resources and PowerPoints pretty soon here. So thank you all.
Thanks, Kels. She and Rochelle did an amazing job. We just recovered. That was big. That was a lot of work. We are happy about how that went. So thanks for being there. That's it for our main session today of Learn. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be back again August 11th. And I love when people suggest ideas for these to me. So please do and share this invitation with others. We've got over 800 people on this list. It keeps growing. So we're going to hang around now for our bonus breakout. If you can't join us, maybe you have something at the top of the hour. Have a lovely month, and we'll see you next time. This is what we do, though, for our bonus breakouts. We kind of just transition to a more informal